The station was old, older than human civilization, older than the pyramids, older than the first cities, older than the oldest stories ever told on Earth. It hung in the darkness above a pale green planet, and inside its massive halls, the rulers of the galaxy had gathered to judge humanity. Admiral Park stood alone in the center of the great chamber. He was 63 years old. His hair had turned long ago, and deep lines marked his face like old battle scars. He wore the black uniform of the United Earth Navy, and on his chest were medals that told stories of blood and fire and impossible survival. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his eyes were calm. Around him, rising like mountains of light and shadow, were the holograms of the Galaxy Council. 12 species, 12 ancient civilizations that had ruled the stars for 60,000 years. They looked down at the small human with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disgust to cold indifference. The high speaker floated at the center of the council seats. Its body was made of living crystal, and light moved through it like slow water. When it spoke, its voice filled the chamber like the ringing of distant bells. Human representative, you have been summoned to answer for the crimes of your species. Did not move, he did not blink, he simply waited. The continued. In 200 years, your kind has spread across 37 star systems. You have built weapons of terrible power. You have refused to share your military technology with the Council. You have ignored our demands for inspection. You have acted as if the laws of this galaxy do not apply to you. A rumble of agreement came from the other Council members. The representative, a massive creature covered in armored plates, slammed its fist against its console. The envoy, a being of flowing silver liquid, rippled with what might have been anger. These actions cannot continue, they said. The Council has decided. Humanity will disarm. You will surrender your outer colonies. You will submit to indefinite observation by Council peacekeepers. If you refuse, the combined military forces of all 12 species will compel your compliance. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every form of alien perception focused on the lone human standing in the center of the room. This was the moment. This was where the young species would bow. This was where they would beg for mercy, promise cooperation, offer anything to avoid the wrath of civilizations that had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. Admiral Park took a slow breath, and then he laughed. It was not a loud laugh. It was soft, almost sad, like the sound a man makes when he remembers something painful. But in the silence of that ancient chamber, it was like thunder. The council members shifted in confusion. No species had ever laughed before them. No species had ever shown anything but fear or respect in this place. "You misunderstand," said quietly. His voice was steady and it carried to every corner of the room. "We did not come here to negotiate." This crystalline form flickered with irritation. "Then you came to surrender." "No." "Then what? What possible reason could your small species have for standing before us without fear?" Looked up at the towering holograms. He looked at these beings who had ruled the stars for longer than humans had existed, and his eyes held something that made even the oldest of them feel a chill they could not explain. "We came to warn you." Behind him, the door to the chamber opened. A young woman walked in. She was Lieutenant's aide. She was 31 years old, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see everything. She carried a small device in her hands, and she moved with the careful precision of someone who had been trained for combat since childhood. She stopped beside the Admiral and gave a small nod. "Warn us," the representative laughed, a deep booming sound. "What could humans possibly warn us about? We have seen 1,000 species rise and fall. We have crushed rebellions that made your entire history look like a child's game. What threat could you offer that we have not already faced and defeated?" Did not answer immediately. Instead, he gestured too. She activated the device, and suddenly the air above them filled with light. Images formed, shapes and colors that painted a story in the darkness. Earth appeared, beautiful blue and green, floating in the black sea of space. Then the images changed. Fire, endless fire, cities burning, oceans boiling away into steam. The sky turned red with falling debris and the ground cracked open like broken glass. People ran through streets filled with ash, and above them shapes moved in the smoke, shapes that were not human, shapes that had no mercy. 62 years ago, said, his voice heavy with memory, we made first contact, but not with you. The council members leaned forward, their earlier arrogance beginning to fade. We called them the Hollow. We do not know what they called themselves because they never spoke to us. They did not send messages. They did not demand surrender. They simply came out of the darkness between stars and they began to kill. The images showed ships falling from orbit. Human ships, tiny and fragile, exploding like toys against the massive forms of the enemy. Cities were wiped away in single blasts of energy. Forests burned. Mountains melted. The death toll counter in the corner of the display spun upward, the numbers climbing faster and faster until they became meaningless. 4 billion people died in the first 18 months, said. Men, women, children, soldiers and civilians, the young and the old. The Hollow did not care. They killed everything they touched. The high speaker's light had dimmed. The Hollow are a myth, a legend. The precursor species destroyed them 1,000,000 years ago. The precursors failed, said. Her voice was cold and hard. They only destroyed part of the Hollow. The rest retreated beyond the galactic rim and they waited. They waited for a very long time, and then they found us. Stepped forward, and for the first time, the council saw something in his eyes that they recognized. It was the look of a man who had seen the end of everything and had somehow survived. We fought them alone, he said. We had no allies, no advanced technology. We had only our hands and our anger and our absolute refusal to die. We built weapons from scraps. We flew ships held together with wire and prayer. We sent soldiers into battles they could not win, and we watched them die, and we sent more. His voice grew quieter, but somehow it filled the chamber completely. And in the end, we killed them, every last one that came to our world. We learned their weaknesses and we exploited them without mercy. We became something different, something harder, something that even the Hollow learned to fear before we finished them. The council was silent now. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something new, something uncomfortable. So when you threaten us with your fleets, continued, when you demand that we disarm and submit, you should understand something very clearly. He looked up at them, and his eyes were like windows into a darkness they had never imagined. We are not afraid of you. We are not afraid of anything in this galaxy, because we have already faced the worst thing the universe could send against us, and we survived. He paused. But the Hollow were only scouts, the first wave. Something bigger is coming, something that even we might not be able to stop alone. He turned as if to leave, then stopped and looked back over his shoulder. That is our warning. Run while you still have time, or stay and learn to fight like we did. His final words echoed in the silent chamber. Either way, the storm is coming, and when it arrives, everything you think you know about war will become meaningless. The silence in the council chamber lasted for a long time. The holographic representatives of 12 ancient civilizations stared at the human admiral and his young aide, and none of them seemed to know what to say. Finally, the high speaker's crystalline form began to glow brighter, a sign of returning confidence. These are stories, it said. Tales meant to frighten us. The Hollow are legend, nothing more. We have records going back 60,000 years, and there is no evidence of any such species. Admiral Park turned back to face the council. His expression did not change. He had expected this. He had spent his entire journey to this station preparing for exactly this moment. "Show them," he said to Lieutenant. Nodded and pressed several commands on her device. The holographic display above them flickered and changed. New images appeared. These were not artistic recreations or computer simulations. These were recordings, real footage captured by human cameras during the darkest days in Earth's history. The first image showed a city. It was Seoul, though it was almost impossible to recognize. The tall buildings that had once reached toward the sky were broken and burning. Smoke filled the streets, and fires painted everything in shades of orange and red. The camera shook as the person holding it ran through the destruction. And then something moved in the smoke. It was tall, taller than any human. Its body was black, like it had been carved from the space between stars. It had too many limbs, and they bent in ways that made the mind uncomfortable. Where its head should have been, there was only a smooth surface that reflected nothing. The creature turned toward the camera. There was no face to read, no eyes to meet. But somehow, the recording captured a sense of hunger so deep and empty that even the council members felt it through the display. "This footage was taken on the 32nd day of the invasion," said. Her voice was steady, professional. She had watched these recordings 100 times. She had trained herself not to feel anything when she saw them. The city of Seoul. Population at the time of attack, 26 million. Population at the time this footage was taken, approximately 2 million. Population 3 days later, 0. The representative shifted uneasily on its platform. The envoy's silver form had become very still. The display changed again. Now it showed space. Earth hung in the background, and around it, ships burned. Human ships, small and primitive compared to the vessels of the council species. They were fighting something massive, a ship that was not really a ship at all. It looked like it had grown rather than been built, all curves and organic shapes covered in structures that might have been weapons or mouths or something worse. Missiles streaked toward it from the human vessels. Nuclear weapons, the most powerful things humanity had built at that time. They struck the hollow ship and exploded in bright flashes of light. The hollow ship did not stop. It did not slow down. It simply absorbed the attacks and continued forward, and as it moved, it reached out with tendrils of dark energy and touched the human ships. Wherever it touched, the ships went silent and dark, and then they were pulled inside. "We lost 47 ships in that engagement," said. "Over 15,000 sailors. The hollow ship suffered no damage we could detect. This was the 3rd month of the war. We had already lost half of our population." The light flickered. "If these recordings are real, why have we never seen this before? Why did you hide this from the galaxy?" His jaw tightened. "Because you would not have believed us. Because when we reached out for help in those early days, every species we contacted told us we were alone. They said the galaxy was peaceful. They said there were no threats beyond the rim. They called us liars and paranoid primitives." He stepped closer to the council platforms. "So we stopped asking for help. We stopped hoping that someone would come to save us, and we focused on the only thing that mattered: survival." The display changed again. This time, it showed something different. Not destruction, but creation. Underground facilities carved deep into mountains. Laboratories filled with equipment that glowed with strange energy. Assembly lines where weapons were being built. Weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We studied the Hollow," explained. "We captured pieces of their technology when we could. We dissected their dead when we managed to kill any. We learned how they worked, what powered them, what made them strong." She paused. "And we learned what made them weak." A new face appeared in the display. A man, perhaps 50 years old, with burned scars covering half of his face. His eyes were tired but sharp, and he wore the uniform of a military scientist. His name appeared below his image: Captain Shin, Experimental Warfare Division. "The Hollow feed on fear," his recorded voice said. "Their technology, their ships, even their bodies are powered by the psychological energy of their victims. The more afraid you are, the stronger they become. This is why they do not negotiate. This is why they do not simply destroy planets from orbit. They need to hunt. They need to see their prey running. They need to taste the terror. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. This was not how wars were supposed to work. This was something alien, something wrong in ways they had never imagined. Continued. But we discovered something interesting. When a human stops being afraid, when they reach that point where fear becomes anger, where desperation becomes determination, the hollow cannot feed. Their weapons become less effective. Their movements become slower. They can be hurt. He leaned closer to the camera. And when a human decides that they would rather die fighting than live running, the hollow become almost surprised, as if they cannot understand what they are seeing. In those moments, they are vulnerable. Spoke again. We lost 4 billion people learning this lesson. 4 billion men and women and children who died so that the rest of us could understand how to fight. And once we understood, we did not stop. We pushed forward even when it seemed impossible. We attacked even when we should have retreated. We threw ourselves against them again and again until they started to break. Another face appeared. A woman this time, small and thin with dark circles under her eyes. Dr. Bay, the display identified her. Chief Scientist, Project Threshold. The Hollow are not invaders, said. They are scouts, the first wave of something much larger. Every species they have encountered, every civilization they have touched in their million-year journey across the universe has been completely destroyed. They do not conquer, they do not enslave, they consume everything, every planet, every star, every trace that a species ever existed. Her voice grew softer, more serious. The scouts report back. They send signals into the void and something listens, something waits. When the scouts confirm that prey has been found, the swarm comes. And the swarm has never been stopped. Not once. Not in a million years of hunting. The council chamber had grown very cold. The ancient species, the rulers of the galaxy, were beginning to understand something terrible. Stepped forward one final time. His eyes moved across each of the holographic forms, meeting their gazes one by one. The Hollow Scouts came to Earth 62 years ago. We killed them, every single one. We did not let any escape. We did not let them send their signal. He paused. But the scouts that were sent to your territories, the ones you dismissed as myth, as legend, as impossible, those scouts were not stopped. They completed their mission. They sent their report. The High Speaker's form flickered with something that might have been fear. What are you saying? His voice was heavy, with a weight that had nothing to do with his words. The swarm does not know about humanity. They do not know we exist, but they know about you. They know about every species in this council, every civilization you have built, every world you call home. He looked up at them, and his eyes held a sadness that was older than his years. They are coming, not for us, for you. And when they arrive, they will do to your worlds what they tried to do to ours. The only difference is that you will not have 60 years to prepare. You might have months, maybe less. The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices shouted in a dozen different languages. Holographic forms flickered with panic and anger and denial. But through it all, Admiral Park stood still and silent, watching the galaxy begin to understand the price it would soon have to pay. And beside him, Lieutenant whispered something only he could hear. Do you think they believe us now? Did not smile. It does not matter if they believe us. The truth is coming whether they accept it or not. 3 days passed after the council meeting. 3 days of arguments and debates and accusations. The 12 species could not agree on anything. Some believed the human story. Some called it a lie designed to frighten them into accepting human power. Some simply refused to think about it at all. On the human diplomatic vessel orbiting the council station, Admiral Park waited. He had done what he came to do. He had delivered the warning. Now all he could do was hope that some of them would listen. Lieutenant found him standing at the observation window, staring out at the stars. The pale green planet below them reflected light across his face, making him look older than his years. The representative sent another request, she said. They want more proof. They want to inspect Earth directly. Shook his head slowly. No, Earth's location stays secret. That was the first rule we made after the war ended. No one knows where we come from. No one can find us unless we want to be found. Understood. During the Hollow invasion, Earth's position in the galaxy had been their greatest weakness. If they had been able to hide, to disappear into the vastness of space, maybe fewer would have died. After the war, humanity had decided that they would never be found again unless they chose to reveal themselves. The Council is falling apart, said. They cannot agree on anything. They want to prepare defenses. They want to attack us instead, claiming we are the real threat. They are already planning evacuation routes. Let them argue, said quietly. Fear makes people stupid. They will argue until the swarm arrives, and then they will finally understand that nothing they have been fighting about matters. Moved to stand beside him at the window. Do you think we made a mistake coming here, warning them? The Admiral was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with memory. When I was young, before the Hollow came, I was a fisherman. I lived in a small village on the coast. My father taught me to read the ocean to understand when storms were coming. He always said the same thing. When you see the storm, you warn others. Even if they do not believe you, even if they laugh at you, you warn them because it is right. He turned to look at, and she saw the weight in his eyes. The Council may not listen. They may refuse to prepare. They may die cursing our names, but we warned them. We did what was right. Whatever happens next is not our failure. A soft alarm sounded in the ship. Both of them turned toward the bridge, knowing that something had changed. The communications officer was waiting for them when they arrived. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the frontier, from Watchtower 7. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. Watchtower 7 was one of humanity's secret monitoring stations, hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Its job was simple: watch for anything coming from beyond the galactic rim, watch for the swarm. Put it through, he ordered. The screen flickered and a face appeared. Commander O was a young man, perhaps 30 years old, with short black hair and determined eyes. He had been stationed at Watchtower 7 for 2 years, watching the endless darkness, waiting for something that he hoped would never come. Behind him, red lights were flashing, alarms were screaming, and through the viewport of his station, something was moving in the void. This is Commander O, Watchtower 7, he said. His voice was steady, trained by years of military discipline, but there was an edge to it that could not be hidden. We have contact, multiple contacts, classification, swarm. His hands tightened into fists. How many? Turned to check his instruments, and when he looked back, something had changed in his eyes. Something that looked like the beginning of acceptance. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Our sensors cannot get an accurate count. They just keep coming. Ship after ship after ship, pouring out of the darkness like they were waiting just beyond our sight. He swallowed hard. They matched the profiles from the old war. Same energy signatures, same biological structure, same attack patterns, sir. It is them. It is really them. Behind, an explosion shook the station. The lights flickered, and sparks rained down from damaged systems. They have seen us, said. First hostile contact confirmed. They are not attempting communication. They are just. Another explosion, closer this time. They are fast, continued. Faster than we expected. The projections said we would have months. We might have days, maybe hours. Leaned toward the screen. Commander, begin evacuation protocols. Get your people out now. Smiled, but it was a sad smile. The smile of a man who knew what was coming. Negative, Admiral. The evacuation shuttles were destroyed in the first strike. We are locked in here, but we are still broadcasting. Every ship in the human fleet is receiving this data. They will know what is coming. They will have time to prepare. The screen shook violently. Something massive had struck the station. "Sir, there is one more thing," said quickly. "The swarm is not heading for human space. They are heading for the Council territories, for the outer colonies. They will reach inhabited worlds within 3 days." Closed his eyes. 3 days. The Council had 3 days to stop arguing and start fighting, or they would begin to die. "Commander," he said, opening his eyes, "your service honors all of humanity." Straightened, and for a moment, despite the chaos around him, he looked almost peaceful. "We knew this day would come, sir. We prepared for it. Every man and woman on this station volunteered knowing they might be the first to see the enemy return." He paused. "Tell the Council what I said. Tell them the swarm is real. Tell them to stop playing politics and start building weapons." His eyes hardened. "And tell them that humanity is coming to help. Not because we owe them anything. Not because they deserve it, but because that is what we do. We fight. We protect. We survive." The screen went white with static as something massive tore through the station. When the image returned for just a moment, was still there, still standing, still broadcasting even as his world fell apart around him. "For Earth," he said, "for everyone who died in the first war, for everyone who will die in the next." The transmission ended. Admiral Park stood in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew, and his voice was like iron. "Contact the Council. Tell them the swarm is here. Tell them they have 3 days to decide if they want to live or die." He walked toward the command chair and sat down heavily. "And contact Fleet Admiral. Tell him to wake up the hidden armada." His eyes widened. "Sir, the Council has forbidden us from building those ships if they learn about the armada." "The Council can be angry later," interrupted. "Right now, they need soldiers. They need warriors. They need people who know how to fight something that has never been defeated." He looked out at the stars, and his expression was the expression of a man who had seen war before and knew he was about to see it again. "They need humans." The ship's engines roared to life as it turned toward Council space. Behind them, in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, something ancient and hungry was finally beginning to move. And in the distance, aboard a ship that officially did not exist, Fleet Admiral received the message he had been waiting 60 years to hear. "The swarm is coming," he read aloud. His face did not change expression. "Wake the armada." He stood from his chair and looked out at the fleet hidden in the shadows of a dead moon. 200 ships, weapons that should not exist, soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "It is time," he said quietly. "Time to show the galaxy what humanity learned in the fire." The darkness around them began to glow as engines came online one by one. The war for survival had begun. The outer colonies burned first. The planet was called Shield, named after an ancient hero who had once defended his people against invasion. It was a world of mountains and forests, home to 300 million souls who had lived in peace for over 8,000 years. They had 47 hours of warning. 47 hours from the moment the human transmission arrived to the moment the sky filled with darkness. It was not enough. They were a warrior species. They had built their civilization on strength and honor and the belief that any enemy could be defeated through courage and power. Their ships were massive, covered in armor thick enough to stop almost any weapon. Their soldiers were giants, standing 3 meters tall, with bodies that could survive damage that would kill any other species. None of it mattered. The first wave of swarm ships entered the system like a wave of black water flooding through a broken dam. They were not beautiful. They were not even really ships in any normal sense. They looked like they had been grown rather than built, all organic curves and pulsing membranes and openings that might have been engines or mouths or something worse. There were thousands of them. The defense fleet, 47 proud warships, moved to intercept. Their commanders were confident. They had faced enemies before. They had always won. The battle lasted 16 minutes. The swarm did not fight like any enemy they had ever faced. They did not form lines. They did not attempt tactics or strategy. They simply flowed forward, absorbing damage without slowing, reaching out with tendrils of dark energy that passed through shields as if they did not exist. Ship after ship went dark. Their crews did not die from explosions or decompression. They simply stopped moving, their minds touched by something vast and hungry that drank their thoughts like water from a cup. And then the ships were pulled inside the largest swarm vessels, and nothing that went in ever came out. By the time the last warship fell, the swarm had already reached the planet. Ambassador Lee watched the destruction from the bridge of the Council emergency vessel. She was 52 years old, a survivor of the First Hollow War. She had been 12 when the invaders came to Earth, had spent 3 years running through burning cities and hiding in underground shelters while her world died around her. She had thought she would never see anything that horrible again. She was wrong. The council representatives were gathered on the ship, evacuated from their station as the swarm approached. They watched the display screens in silence, their ancient confidence shattered by what they were seeing. The High Speaker's crystalline form had dimmed to almost nothing. "This cannot be happening," it whispered. "We were the rulers of this galaxy. We were eternal, we were." "You were never safe," said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of old pain beneath it. "You just told yourselves you were. You built your stations and your fleets and your laws, and you believed that nothing could touch you. But the universe does not care about laws or stations or beliefs. It only cares about survival." The envoy rippled with something that might have been despair. "What do we do? How do we fight something like this?" Before could answer, a new voice came through the communication system. It was Admiral Park, speaking from somewhere in the approaching human fleet. "You do not fight them the way you have fought anything before. You do not defend. You do not retreat and regroup. You do not try to negotiate or find common ground." His face appeared on screen, old and tired, but burning with something that the council members did not recognize. It took them a moment to understand what it was. It was certainty. "You attack," continued. "You attack even when it seems hopeless. You attack even when you are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. You throw everything you have at them, and when that is gone, you throw yourselves. Because the swarm expects fear. They feed on it. They grow stronger when their enemies run." He leaned forward, and his eyes were like windows into 60 years of preparation. "But when you stop running, when you turn and face them with nothing but anger and determination, something changes. They slow down. They become confused. They can be hurt." The council members exchanged uncertain looks. This was not how civilized species fought wars. This was something primitive, something desperate, something human. "The hidden armada is arriving in your space now," said. 200 ships armed with weapons we developed from hollow technology, weapons that can actually damage the swarm. We are going to attack the swarm fleet at SHIELD. We are going to buy time for the surviving to evacuate." The representative, watching from another screen, made a sound of disbelief. "You would fight for us, after we threatened you, after we called you liars." His expression did not change. "We are not fighting for you. We are fighting because if the swarm is not stopped here, they will spread across the entire galaxy. Every world will burn. Every species will die, including us." He paused. "But there is something you need to understand. We cannot win this war alone. We survived the first hollow attack because we had nothing left to lose. We fought with the strength of absolute desperation. If you want to survive, you must find that same strength." Ambassador stepped forward, her voice carrying across the council chamber. 62 years ago, I was a child. I watched my parents die when a hollow ship destroyed our city. I spent years running, hiding, starving. I saw humanity at its worst, but I also saw it at its best. I saw ordinary people stand up against impossible enemies. I saw teachers and farmers and shopkeepers become soldiers because there was no one else left to fight. Her eyes moved across the alien faces. We survived because we refused to give up, not because we were stronger than the enemy, not because we had better weapons or smarter tactics. We survived because when everything was lost, we decided that losing was not acceptable. She took a breath. That is what you must learn. That is what the swarm has never faced before, a galaxy full of species who refuse to die quietly. The high speaker straightened its crystalline form. For a moment, something like its old authority returned. What do you need from us? His answer was immediate. Ships, soldiers, resources, everything you have. The swarm's main force is still gathering beyond the rim. What we are fighting now is only the first wave, the vanguard. If we can hold them here, if we can slow them down, we might have time to build a real defense. And if we cannot hold them? The admiral's face was hard as stone. Then we fall back. We burn everything in our retreat. We do not leave them anything they can use. We make every system they take cost them, and we keep fighting until there is nothing left to fight with. The envoy spoke softly. You speak of total war, war without end, war without mercy. Yes, said simply, because that is the only kind of war the swarm understands. They have destroyed over 200 civilizations across 1,000,000 years. Those civilizations tried to negotiate. They tried to surrender. They tried to hide. None of it worked. The only thing the swarm has never faced is a prey species that keeps fighting even when all hope is gone. He smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. We are going to be the first. The council chamber fell silent. The weight of what they were being asked to do pressed down on every being present. Then slowly, the representative raised one massive armored fist. They were born in war, it said, its deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. We have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. You humans have reminded us. We will stand with you. The high speaker's light brightened. They have guided this galaxy for 60,000 years. We will not abandon it now. Our fleets will join yours. One by one, the other species spoke. Some with confidence, some with fear, some with voices that shook with emotion. But one by one, they committed. Admiral Park nodded slowly. Then let us begin. The first battle is about to start, and we have a lot of work to do. Behind him, through the viewport of his ship, the first human warships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their weapons already powering up as they moved toward the distant glow of a dying world. The war to save the galaxy had begun, and humanity was leading the charge. The battle for S.H.I.E.L.D. lasted 9 days. Fleet Admiral commanded the human forces from the bridge of the dreadnought final argument. It was the largest ship humanity had ever built, bristling with weapons that should not exist, null-space torpedoes that could tear holes in reality, singularity lances that compressed matter into points of infinite density, antimatter warheads powerful enough to crack continents. They had been building these weapons in secret for 60 years, hidden from the Council, hidden from everyone, waiting for the day when the swarm would return. That day had come. Was 71 years old, but his body was still strong. The scars that covered his arms and face were reminders of the First War, of battles fought when he was barely old enough to hold a weapon. He had survived the burning of. He had survived the siege of the underground shelters. He had survived things that would have broken weaker men. He had not survived by being careful. He had survived by being willing to do whatever was necessary. All ships begin attack pattern Delta, he ordered. His voice was calm, almost casual, as if he was discussing the weather rather than commanding the largest military operation in galactic history. The 200 human ships moved as one. They did not form defensive lines like the HAD. They did not try to protect themselves or maintain distance from the enemy. They dove straight into the heart of the swarm fleet, weapons blazing, shields flaring as they absorbed hit after hit. The swarm had never faced anything like this. Their tactics were built on fear. For 1,000,000 years, every species they had encountered had run from them, had tried to defend, had tried to survive. The swarm's entire strategy was based on pursuing, surrounding, overwhelming. But the humans did not run. The humans attacked. The null-space torpedoes tore through swarm vessels, creating rifts in space that swallowed ships whole. The singularity lances crushed the organic hulls like paper, and when the human ships ran out of ammunition, they did not retreat. They rammed. The first ship to do it was a destroyer called Unbroken Promise. Its captain was a woman named, 43 years old, mother of 2 children who were safe on a hidden human colony far from the battle. When her weapons ran dry and her engines were damaged, she aimed her ship at the largest swarm vessel she could find and accelerated. The explosion could be seen from the planet's surface. It took out 17 swarm ships. Others followed, not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. When retreat became impossible, when damage made survival unlikely, human captains made a choice that the swarm could not understand. They chose to spend their deaths well. On the ground, the fighting was even more brutal. Sergeant led a squad of 30 soldiers through the burning streets of a city. Their mission was simple: evacuate civilians. Get as many people as possible onto transport ships before the swarm ground forces arrived. It was supposed to take 6 hours. It had been 16, and they were still fighting. The swarm ground forces were nightmares made flesh. They stood 3 meters tall, bodies covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. They had too many limbs and no visible eyes, but they could sense their prey with perfect accuracy. They did not use weapons. They did not need to. Their bodies were weapons. Had lost half her squad in the first hour. She had lost another third in the hours since. Now she stood with 4 soldiers at a broken bridge, the last crossing point to the evacuation zone, while thousands of civilians streamed past them. The swarm was coming. She could hear them. The sound of their movement was like wind through dead trees, a whisper that grew louder with every moment. "How many civilians left?" she asked through her communication device. The answer came back, 200, maybe 10 more minutes. Looked at her remaining soldiers. They were exhausted, covered in blood that was mostly not their own. Their ammunition was almost gone. Their armor was dented and cracked. None of them looked afraid. "You heard the count," she said. 10 minutes. We hold for 10 minutes. Private Nam, the youngest of them at 22, checked his weapon and nodded. "We can do 10 minutes. Corporal, her face streaked with sweat and dirt, moved to a better position. "After everything we have been through today, 10 minutes is nothing." The whispers grew louder. The first swarm creatures emerged from the smoke, their bodies flowing like liquid shadow. Raised her weapon. "For Earth," she said, "for everyone who did not make it this far." They opened fire. The next 10 minutes were the longest of her life. The swarm came in waves, each one larger than the last. Her soldiers fell one by one, each of them taking a dozen enemies with them. Nam died holding a gap in the barricade with nothing but a broken rifle and his bare hands. 3 swarm creatures fell before he did. Died carrying a wounded child to safety, her body shielding the small form even as the swarm tore into her. One by one they fell, until only remained. She was wounded. Her left arm was useless, hanging at her side. Her weapon was empty, but she stood in the center of the bridge, blocking the path to the evacuation zone, and she did not move. The swarm surrounded her, dozens of them, hundreds. They moved closer, their whisper voices rising into something that might have been confusion. They had never seen prey that did not run. They had never seen prey that stood alone against impossible odds and refused to step aside. Pulled out her last weapon, a small device that glowed with pale blue light, a singularity grenade, standard issue for human soldiers since the First War, powerful enough to destroy everything within 200 meters. Evacuation complete, the voice came through her communication device. All civilians are aboard. You can fall back now, Sergeant. Smiled. No, she said, I do not think I will. She activated the grenade. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from orbit. When it faded, the bridge was gone. The swarm forces that had gathered there were gone, and Sergeant was gone. But 200 civilians were alive. They reached the transport ships. They flew to safety. They survived because one human woman decided that her death was worth their lives. Later, when the battle for S.H.I.E.L.D. was finally won, the commander approached Admiral with something like wonder in his eyes. Your people fight like they have nothing to lose, he said, like death means nothing to them. Shook his head slowly. Death means everything to us. We value life more than you can understand, but we learned something in our first war that most species never learn. What is that? There are things worth dying for: family, friends, strangers who need protection, the future itself. He looked out at the stars, at the endless darkness that still held so much danger. When you find something worth dying for, death stops being an enemy. It becomes a tool, a weapon, something you can use against those who think they can take everything from you. There was silence for a long moment. We have lived for thousands of years believing that survival was the highest goal, that nothing was worth the risk of extinction. And now, the massive alien looked at the distant shape of his wounded, at the rescue ships still carrying survivors to safety, at the human warships that had fought and bled and died to protect people who were not even their own species. Now I understand why you humans are still alive, he said, and why the swarm is going to lose. Did not smile. There was still too much war ahead to smile. They have not lost yet, he said. This was only the beginning. The real fight is still coming. He turned back to his bridge, where his crew was already preparing for the next battle. But you are right about one thing. They are going to lose, because we are not going to stop until they do, no matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. His eyes were hard as the void between stars. That is the price of survival, and humanity has already paid it once. We know exactly how high it is. In the distance, beyond the rim of the galaxy, the main swarm force was still gathering, still growing, still preparing for the final assault that would either destroy the galaxy or be destroyed by it. The war had only just begun. But for the first time in a million years, the swarm had encountered something they did not understand. They had encountered an enemy who was not afraid to die. And that made all the difference.